Eternal Word Television Studios in Birmingham, Alabama.
Jesus. The most glorious work of all, to praise God in His kingdom. Moved by the Spirit, one who lives in love lives in God, and God lives in him. What a wonderful thing is our church. This whole network is built on trust. The essence of evangelization is to tell everybody Jesus loves you. We are all called to be great saints. Don't miss the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, this is family night, and many people have asked me, in the last couple of months anyway, to make Stations of the Cross. How many people here remember Stations of the Cross? Huh? Most of you do, don't you? Well, for those who don't know, if you go into a Catholic church, at least most of them, you'll find plaques on the wall. And they're numbered, 1, 2, 3, up to 14. And usually have 7 on one side of the church, 7 on the other. And the purpose of this is to recall the life of Jesus' passion and how he died for us. And the purpose of that is to make us understand what sin, that's a dirty word today, isn't it? We don't talk about sin today. So you want to hurt people's feelings. You make them feel guilty. But that's what I want to do tonight, is make you feel guilty. Thank you. But in a good way, not a bad way. There's good guilt, isn't there? Your conscience tells you, that you shouldn't do that now. So there's good guilt, then you do something and it bothers you, so you know the next time you shouldn't do that. So that's good guilt. Then there's that guilt that comes from thinking God doesn't forgive and He doesn't forget, and you're the biggest sinner in the world, and all this kind of thing. And that is not good guilt. So these Stations of the Cross are very powerful. Because when I have a cross, you have a cross that's too heavy to bear. Then if you look at Him, your cross suddenly seems smaller. Did anybody ever, you were carrying a heavy cross, and somebody comes up to you and tells you all the things they're going through, and you kind of say, oh God, I thought I had it bad. Did you ever have that experience? And all of a sudden, you feel better. You feel, well, everything's happened in that family, and here I have one little cross, and I'm beefing about it. So you feel better, don't you? But that's the whole purpose of the Stations of the Cross. It's not an abstract thing. It's a very, very real thing. I make them every day. I don't feel good if I don't make them, not because I'm scrupulous. I had a superior one time who said she wished I had a couple scruples, Anyway, it's just because I feel like I'm missing something in my own life if I don't make those stations every day. So we have to learn something about His journey so that we know how to live our journey. We all have a way of the cross. Every one of us has a way of the cross. And sometimes we get kind of upset with it, and we say, now, Lord, pick on somebody else, And we just feel like we've had enough. Do you ever feel that way? Did you ever feel that way? Yeah, I bet after you broke your arm you felt that way. You just didn't. Huh? Yeah, you just didn't need that. But then here's where we need to look at the stations. And what I want to do, if the Lord will give me the grace, you pray for that grace, is to apply these stations to your everyday life. See, if you just make the stations and you just kind of look at Jesus in the past, Jesus said, who does anything to you the least, to me the least, he who would do it to him. Is that right? So your cross is his cross. So we're going to take the first station. Now, if anybody wants to call in between here, please do so. If we don't finish the stations this week, we'll just finish them next week. You know, when you own the station, you're not bound by time, are you? If you want to just take your time, you just go ahead and take it. That's all. So, this is not going to be a fun night, but maybe it'll be a joy-filled night for you, because if it lifts a burden from you, then it'll be joy-filled. So, we're going to take the first station. Now, when we say station, we're talking about these little plaques. They're tiny pictures, and sometimes very beautifully carved pictures. I've seen stations of the cross that were hand-carved, that were a work of art. And I think we have 3 sets up at the monastery. We have one outside. Some of you may have seen it. And we have one inside and another we're about to put up. So I want to give you the first station. If you remember, Jesus went to the garden and he was abducted in the garden. And the strange part about that, he said, "Who do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth," and they all fell back. Did you ever wonder about that? They all fell down. And they got up again, and he said, "Who do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he said, "I am he." And they fell back again. Do you know why he did that? He wanted them to know that he was going to be in their power through his own power, through his will. He could have just slaughtered them, couldn't he, He could have flattened them out right down through the ground. But he wanted them to know, I wanted you to know, that he took upon himself the cross just on a will level. He wanted to do it for you. We don't bear crosses for other people very well. Do you think we do? Do you get tired of maybe one individual you know is constantly telling you about their gallbladder and their... Do you get tired of that? Do you cross the street when you see him coming? Well, see, Jesus is not tired. He wanted you to know exactly how he felt. He did this for you. And he wanted us to know, as we look at the Passion, what sin is. See, we don't know. We think sin is just, we just made a mistake, and most of the time we do. But we don't understand the offense against God, do we? If I gave you a sock, right in the eye. No? Well, if I did, that would be an offense, wouldn't it? That'd be a big offense, because it'd be against love and against charity, right? But if I gave the President Bush a sock in the eye, I would be socking the entire nation. So that would be a different story, wouldn't it? See, that'd be quite a different story. Be all in the newspapers, Mother Angelica socked the president. And it would be a terrible scandal. But you see, that's what we have to look at when we look at Jesus before Pilate. We're talking about Pilate, a squirmish little man who couldn't make up his own mind, very weak. We're talking about somebody like that condemning the Son of God. But it's unbelievable, isn't it? That the Son of God would stand there and not say a word, and that, and Pilate said to him, look, he said, you got to answer me. He said, I don't find any cause in this man. He said, whose jurisdiction is he in? He says, Cave. He said, well, send him over there. Can you imagine now the humiliation of Jesus standing before him? See, they had already scourged him. And a Roman scourging had no limit. Jewish scourging had 39 strokes. They used to say 40 less 1. I couldn't figure out why they just didn't say 39. But they always say 40 less 1. And he wasn't scourged by Jewish law. He was scourged by Roman law, which is when they got tired, they quit. And you have to ask yourself, why did Jesus permit himself to be scourged? What a very painful thing, huh? In reparation for all the immorality in the world. If you're having any problems with morals, I suggest that you think of Jesus being scourged at the pillar and in the agony in the garden. See, in the agony in the garden, Jesus knew all the people who would not benefit by his death. What a terrible thing. You know, there's a consolation, isn't it? Like if you had 2 of your sons or daughters that each one needed a kidney, and you said, look, I'll give you one, I'll give you each one. Well, you wouldn't mind doing that if they were grateful, would you? But what would happen if they spit you in the face? What would you do if after you told them you're going to give each one a kidney, which means you yourself would die, and they would just look at you and spit at you in the face? Well, you'd think that was the worst kind of ingratitude. Well, we do that to Jesus. You see, we look at his passion, and we don't understand he died for our sins. And he saw all the people throughout the centuries that would say no to him. Now, in your own life, haven't you stood condemned sometime before people and you weren't guilty? Huh? Everybody has. Has anybody here done that? Sure you have. Sometimes it's a little thing. See? A friend of yours goes up to you and say, why are you mad at me? You say, huh? I'm not mad at you. I'm not angry with you at all. Well, you look like you're angry. Well, maybe you got a toothache or something. See? It's a misunderstanding. You stand then before that person condemned, guilty of something you didn't do. And there's no way to talk them out of it. Did you ever try to talk somebody out of something that somebody who's condemned you for something you're not guilty of? Isn't that a terrible thing? Well, now you begin to understand, you see, what Jesus did. And sometimes you're condemned by your own children. See, you did your very best for them, and still they condemn you. Well, why did you do this? Some children find fault with their parents because they were so good to them. Now, I never understood that. I was spoiled. You never loved me. You gave me everything, but you never loved me. Never saw love in the things you gave. Isn't that a form of condemnation? Don't you feel condemned by your children when, as good as you were to them, they go out on drugs? And don't you just stand there feeling as if you did something terribly wrong? But you didn't. They're blaming you for their bad decisions. Isn't that a condemnation? Huh? Now you know what Jesus did, and that's what you got to when you're condemned unjustly. That's why we have these little plaques on our walls. It's just not to run through them, and it has to apply to your life. If you want to really feel what Jesus felt, you've got to apply this to your life. And there's no person in the world, especially peer pressure for the young teenagers is terrible. And you stand condemned amidst the whole school if you don't go along with them. Well, think of Jesus before Pilate, and he was silent. He didn't say anything, except once. Pilate got kind of angry with him. You know, he was a wishy-washy man. And Jesus was helpless. His hands were tied. He was very, very, very torn up with scourging, crown of thorns on his head. And the first thing you know, Pilate says he's angry. And he says, hey, don't you know I have the power to release you and the power to crucify you? And our Lord said a very strange thing, but a very wonderful thing. He said, you have no power over me except it's given you from above. Oh, he got him quieted down in a hurry. You know, that's the most powerful sentence in the world. Jesus said to Pilate, now listen what he's saying. Jesus said to Pilate, you have no power to crucify me and no power to release me unless it's given to you by the Father. He saw the Father's will at weak Pilate. And the authority was given to him by Caesar. And Jesus says, no, it was given to you by my Father. He had to straighten him out. Well, how many of us now, in our daily life, we have a hard time thinking this came from God or this was permitted by God, huh? You're shaking your head. Isn't that true? You know, something happened in your life that you just, I got a call the other night from a man who was just so hurt. His heart is so hurt because his little 8.5-year-old daughter died. I think she was killed. And what you think right off the bat, and many tragedies happen in your life. You're going along real good, and the first thing you know, you lose your job. You just bought a new house, and they fired you. You're looking forward to a pension, and they fire you before your pension's up. So now you don't even get a pension. You get a big fat zilchel. And we say, I can't see God in that. God is loving. God is compassionate. But see, Jesus found God. He found the Father in that unjust condemnation. And you say, well, that's not fair. What is fair for us, huh? When we have done such a thing to the Lord, but what is fair? Sometimes we're victims. But we have to have that same conviction that the Father permits it in our life. And because He permits it, I must say yes to God. And I must find God in that very tragedy. Is that hard? Why do you think it's hard?
I don't know. Maybe I expect everything to be well.
You expect everything to be well. Yeah,
because God's supposed to be there.
We expect heaven here.
Right.
Huh? We expect heaven all the way to heaven, don't we? But Jesus did.
That's the only way to look at it.
No, heaven all the way to heaven. And you know it's not practical, is it? Huh? Your body doesn't even think that way. It begins to deteriorate. Is that your husband? Does he look now like he did when you married him?
No, not really.
No, not really. But see, he changed. There's always a change going on in us, and so we have a tendency then to want to hang on to what's right now, what's giving us joy, and it's not going to hang on. It's on its way out. On its way out. And you see, Jesus now gives us many lessons in that first station in our daily life. He taught us that many times the very best thing we do is not appreciated. The very nicest thing we do to somebody, they turn it around against us. And you look at them and you say, I don't believe this is happening. In the Psalms it says something about you and your best friend that used to go into the temple of the Lord together and shared things together, now becomes your enemy. And Jesus did all of that in that first station. See, what he would say, it's the Father, don't worry about it. You know, I'm standing here unjustly accused. Well, he's unjustly accused, so we have the second station. We don't understand really what it means to carry a cross. We all have our crosses, and sometimes we make them ourselves. That's why they don't fit. See, the kind of cross you make yourself never fits. And that's why we can't bear it very well. And we all have to admit we kind of make our own crosses sometimes. But this cross was made specifically for Jesus. Now you're talking about a man who has already lost a lot of blood, who is crowned with thorns. He takes that cross and he can hardly hold it. He's just so exhausted. And don't we get that way sometime, huh? Don't you get tired of carrying your cross? Don't you get tired of that pain every day? Of that thorn in the flesh every day? Don't we get tired of that? Don't we wish somebody else had it, or this thing would end? Do you ever feel that way? But see, Jesus began his passion with the cross when he was at his worst, physically at his worst. And we too carry our cross difficult. We feel scrupulous about that. Do you feel scrupulous sometime when you're beefing about your cross? You feel guilty? Yeah. You really want to bear it better, huh? And all of a sudden you're griping about it. See? And Jesus said he felt that way. Here is this big cross, this big beam they put on his shoulders. They're already red with blood and already torn up, and he has to take this cross. He has to bear it. He can't give it to anybody. He's got it, and he's got to carry it. But he's so weak, he falls. That's the third station. He falls. He can't carry that cross. Now you're talking about the Almighty God in whose hands the planets, the world, everything rests. See, it's like he took his divinity and just put it aside. St. Paul says he emptied himself. Totally emptied himself. And he became like you, just with an endurance that was almost limited. And yet his was unlimited. Nobody could face the cross, could suffer the scourging and the crowning with thorns, and then take a cross on his shoulder and out without dropping dead right there. So he kept himself up for you. Just for you. And you see, when we fall under our crosses, we have to get courage by looking at him. You say, yeah, he fell too. It got too much for him. He put aside his power. He put aside his omnipotence. If I had the power, I wouldn't have put it aside. See, but he allowed himself to be totally human and limited, and he fell. He fell. Now, was his fall ordained by God? Well, you could say it was, but certainly permitted by God, because since he took on his human body and laid aside his divinity so he could suffer all that, the body can just take so much. You can lose so much blood, you go into a coma. You can take so much of a beating and you pass out. And that's what he wanted to suffer like you do. And ours is usually from our human yeah, do you want to ask a question?
Let's say, it's rather painful when you think about all this, but you think about a friend, too, that's been hurt real bad. And how does this help me when I think about Jesus as opposing to thinking about a friend, what that's been hurt or so forth. What's the difference when you're talking about something happened 2,000 years ago? What is it?
But it's not 2,000 years, it's today. When I carry my cross and I fall beneath the weight of it, Jesus is carrying it with me. When I see a neighbor that is so in such pain, dying of cancer, or who lost loved ones, all the tragedies of our human nature and our country, especially today, people going bankrupt, all these kind of tragedies in our lifetime, Jesus is suffering all of that. What I do to them, I do to him. When I'm helping my friend, I am doing now what I wish I had been able to do at that time. It's not a past, something in the past. It's something very present. I've often wished, haven't you often wished you were there?
Yeah, that's kind of a frightening way.
It's frightening, but don't you wish that maybe like Veronica, we're going ahead of ourselves now, but we could have kind of broken through the crowds and wiped his face? Don't you wish you could have just tripped one of those soldiers or done something to them, you know? that they have the audacity, or run around looking for the apostles and saying, where are you? Why aren't you with the master? You know, you just wish you could do these things. Well, the Lord affords you that opportunity now. When you do something like that for your neighbor, when you raise up a man that's fallen beneath his cross, when you raise him up, you're doing now what you couldn't do then. That's why the Stations of the Cross are something very much alive. It's very much alive, and Jesus was moved by the terrible treatment he got. Those soldiers just didn't let him fall. They would crack him with a whip or try to get him back up again. We have to continue. This is where faith, hope, and love come in. See, I have to see Jesus, and then my faith has to be enlivened. My faith has to grow. And I know that even though I've fallen now, I can rise again. I can be forgiven. And maybe I don't take the crosses like you said. We want to be heroic. You know, sometimes we read the lives of the martyrs and we say, wow, I'd like to be a martyr. We can't even take a splinter. You know, we get a splinter in our finger and we're crying our eyes out because it hurts so bad. But see, that's where Jesus gives us courage. Now, the next station is, I think, so sad. Jesus rises. They put the cross back on his shoulders, and he meets his mother. Sometimes I wonder how they must have looked at each other. Can you imagine, for example, someone you love in that condition, and say you were the one in that condition? Wouldn't you be embarrassed that the one you love so much could see you like that? Huh? People that have cancer and they take chemotherapy or radiation, they lose all their hair. Isn't that a terrible kind of cross and embarrassment when the ones that you love so much have to see you bald-headed? Different operations that are so tragic. I saw a man not too long ago that lost all of his jaw and part of his face. And I thought to myself, what's in his heart when his mother looks at him, or his wife, or his children? You know, you have to take those kind of things and know that when Jesus met Mary on the way to the cross, they had great sympathy for each other, but that heartache of Mary seeing someone she loved so much in such a terrible condition, and she's helpless. You've all had experience, haven't you, with children who are, there's nothing worse than children with terrible diseases. And you see them in bed, and they're lying there, and they're in pain, and you're helpless. The doctors can't do anything, you can't do anything. It's a terrible thing. Well, that's nothing compared to what Mary and Jesus went through when they looked at each other. But they did it for you. You see? And it's every cross you have, every pain you have, is like meeting Jesus on the way of the cross. And he looks at you with such compassion. See, he suffers with you. Jesus lives in me, huh? I just had a toe operation, and those things are painful. You know, those little wires sticking out of your feet, you know, and you're looking at those things and you wonder, why did I get this thing done, you know? It's better to have hammer toes or something, you know. And you think of Jesus there, barely able to walk up the hill, and you think, "Ma, I don't have any courage at all." So, finally, the soldiers are afraid he's going to die before he gets up the hill, because he's getting weaker. So they pull somebody out of the crowd called Simon the Cyrenian. They forced him. He didn't want to do it. That was a disgrace. And they forced him to do it. He had 2 sons with him. And I would imagine, though, when Simon took Jesus' cross on his shoulders, there must have been some kind of inner joy. Some kind of inner feeling of deep awareness that I'm carrying his cross. Well, that's an easy one, isn't it? Huh? How often today do we have the compassion to help somebody carry their cross? Are we forced into it sometimes? Do you know, they say that one of the things wrong in the world today is a lack of compassion. We have a lot of misdirected compassion, but very little real compassion. We don't want to even listen to the same person telling us for the 25th time about the same operation. We're not too good with organ recitals, you know? Gallbladder, liver, kidneys. We just are not too good with these kind of recitals. We just don't like it. And are we forced sometime to do acts of love and acts of charity? But you see, Jesus wanted us to know he needed help. But somebody had to be forced to help him. The man who cured the blind, who healed the deaf and the dumb, who made people walk that never walked since birth, who raised the dead. Not one of those people was around during his crucifixion. There wasn't one in the crowd, and I'll bet you there were a lot in that crowd. They were so filled with human respect. And how many times do you suffer out of human respect? But see, Jesus wanted us to have joy. Even though Simon was forced to help Jesus carry that cross, Jesus, I'll make a bet, gave him an inner joy. Don't you get a joy when somebody dies and you go over and you make a great big plate of spaghetti or Irish stew and you bring it over to them so that they don't have to cook? Aren't you being another Simon of Cyrene? If you go and visit somebody who is alone, or you bring him to Mass on Sunday, or you care and say, you know, do you need something? Can I bring you some hot soup? Aren't you being a Simon of Cyrene? Aren't you doing for Jesus what Simon did for Jesus? The next station is Veronica. Veronica is that woman in the scriptures who came out of nowhere and went into the crowds, disappeared. She took her veil off. And she ran to Jesus. And you have to remember that the soldiers, one of the things they used to do that was so gross, they would spit at the men that were being crucified. I don't think there's anything that turns my stomach is if I see a man rolling down his window and spit out of his window. All I can do is pray the wind comes a different direction and brings it right back in his car. You know, I've had that prayer. It's never happened yet. But every time I see that terrible thing, I just pray, Lord, let the wind, reverse the wind, Lord. Just once, Lord. Reverse the wind. And nothing ever happens. There's nothing worse than that. And yet, these people spit in the face of Jesus over and over again. The Lord of all, the God of heaven, the majestic one, the Holy One. And this woman, I hate to say this, but it's almost forced to say it. All the men ran. The women stayed. That weak sex women. They were at the cross. They were all the way up to Passion. They were there after the cross, after the death of Jesus. They were there Easter morning. A lot of strong women. And this woman was strong. She broke through the crowds, pushed through the soldiers, and wiped his face. Every night before you go to bed, you need to ask yourself a question. Did I wipe someone's face today? With my love? With my compassion? With my power to listen? Did I wipe someone's face? Or did I smear it with slander, calumny, gossip? You see, when you do those things, you spend hours on the phone gossiping about this one and gossiping about that one and tearing this one apart and tearing that one apart. You're doing that to Jesus. It's not, the stations are not something in the past. There's something each one of you go through at some time in your life. Sometime in your life. And Jesus was so, by that time, so exhausted, he falls again. That's the seventh station. Jesus falls a second time. And what he's saying to us there is that it's not easy to strive for holiness. Did you ever have sometimes a desire to be holy and everything seems to be falling in place? You're praying good, and you go into church and you just want to stay there for hours. Did you ever have that feeling, huh? And you're just on your way now to holiness. And something happens to try your faith or to try your hope, and down you go. You're nodding your heads. You thought you had it made, didn't you? I used to think that when I was a young sister. I was always getting another secret I would work on to be holy, something that made it easy. You know, I liked everything instant. And I thought all you have to do is do God's will. And that's a simple thing, and all you have to do is God's will, and bingo, you're holy. That's what it says here. Well, you see, that's fine for about 3 days. Huh? Did you make it 3 days? I used to make it about 3 days. 3 days, and my resolution was shot. Something would happen that I could not understand, and I would say to my dad, cannot be God's will. I forgot my station, see? It can't be God's will. I blow it. I go back to zero again. Go back to zero. But the Lord got up again. See, he got up again, and that's what he's saying to us. Don't worry. You failed. You're sorry. You've gone to confession. You've determined not to do that again. Rise. You're tired fighting. Did you ever get tired fighting? You ever just tired of life? You get up in the morning, you work all day, you come home and eat. You go somewhere maybe, you go to bed, you get up in the morning, you work all day. You go on a vacation and you're more tired when you come back than when you went. And broke. You're broke besides. But the Lord said, it's okay. Keep going. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about it. Don't think of the past. You have this present moment. Get up. Okay?
Mother, I wanted to ask you, it may not be a question you can answer, but when growing up, I went all through Catholic grammar school, high school, and so on. The significance of the stations was never explained as it meant to our lives. Is there some reason for that?
I think that by mistake, I think the stations were relegated to Lent. And every Friday, I don't know what you did did you every Friday? You had Stations of the Cross at night?
Yes.
And of course, the stations during Lent was concentrated entirely upon the passion, the suffering of Jesus, which it should be during Lent. But I think where we missed it, it was a beautiful thing that God gave us. And St. Francis, I hate to brag about it, but it was St. Francis who gave us the stations. And the stations were geared towards making you understand your own stations in life, your own crosses. And we all suffer denial. We all suffer aloneness when we're in pain. There's nobody there to help. We all suffer betrayals. We all do that. And if we don't use these wonderful stations of the cross that are in every Catholic church, if we don't use those to look and say, well, Lord, it's happening to you now through me. See, the Lord said, what I do to you, I do to him. And so whether it's a just or an unjust a cross, I'm doing it to Jesus. Is constantly going through his stations in your stations. And if you don't look at these, if you look at the stations of the cross, as Bill was saying, is something in the past, you're going to, it's wonderful to have sympathy for Jesus, and I recommend that, because that's the whole purpose of that, is to make him know how much he loved you. But if that's all we do, then it's something in the past, and Jesus is in the present moment. When we have Mass every morning, it's not the past sacrifice, it's the sacrifice we see now. In the eyes of God, all things are present. It isn't a sacrifice 2,000 years ago. It's a sacrifice on that altar right now. The very same one, not over and over and over, but the very same one. And I'm there. And I think it's unfortunate sometimes that we were not taught that those stations of the cross are there to elicit sympathy and compassion for Jesus. But I got to see myself there. I got to see me. And I have to see how he bore his cross under the exact same circumstances. When we stray away from God, we have nothing to hang on to except our own human nature, which is not prone to holiness on a natural level. It gives in to itself. Without God, you become an animal. Now, I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but it's true. You cannot listen to a news item. You can't listen to a man who kills 60 people, chops them up, and puts them in his refrigerator. You cannot tell me that that's not like an animal. Worse, because animals don't do that. So these kind of things are tragedies, and when they happen to someone you know and happen to someone you love, you got to run to the cross where Jesus was so torn. You can't. No one was ever scourged by a Roman that even survived. His skin was torn off of him. No one can see Jesus crowned with the thorns, and these thorns, I saw the thorns. They were that long. And no one can be crowned with that. Now that's abuse, that is torture. And I have to relate. Whatever tragedy hits me, I must relate it back to the stations in order to make any sense out of it. And know that when that soul died under tragic circumstances in a state of grace, they got a tremendous reward in the kingdom. Tremendous reward. We had another yeah.
2 questions. Which station can we associate with patients? And the second question is, why is the Friday night Lenten service down to a handful? Why is it sort of going?
The first question is, all of the stations relate to patients. I would think the one that relates to patients most of all was when our dear Lord was nailed to the cross. And there's no indication he gave out even one little scream. That was the most terrible pain in the world. The patience of hanging on a cross for all those hours and praying for his enemies. His unbelievable patience, compassion. If our Friday night services are blah, if you have them at all, if you have them, rejoice. But if they're blah, there's something wrong. The Spirit is not able to come out. We don't cry for anybody anymore. We don't have the compassion to cry for someone else's pain. We've lost compassion. We don't feel what our neighbor feels anymore, and we don't feel what Jesus felt. We're hard of heart, and we have to ask our Lord, take away this stony heart and give me a soft heart of flesh. We can see we're curious about an accident, but we're not compassionate. See? We're curious, but not compassionate. We don't cry over Jesus, and if we don't cry over him, we're not going to cry over each other. See? We don't easily cry. We're ashamed to cry. We're ashamed to show that I feel down to my guts what somebody else is feeling. We don't have that empathy. See? We're cold-hearted. For that reason, we don't have that compassion. We have a call from our audience, and I don't want to miss them. Hello? Hello?
Good evening, Mother.
Good evening.
I was assigned to write the Stations of the Cross at one time, and I want to ask you a question. Now, in writing the stations, I found many books, especially the Pieta, that was very helpful. And we know that no man's cross is for himself alone.
Right.
And we are now aware that we all have to live out his passion, death, and resurrection But when I came to the fourth station, there was nothing in the books about it, and I was trying to have the books help me. So I want to ask you if this fourth station is correct. When Jesus looked at Mary, and they looked at each other, and there wasn't a word said.
No.
But what was said to me is, they were two hearts beating as one in doing the will of the Father. And then I became aware of the precious blood of Mary, because it was her blood also being shed upon the cross. Now, I don't know how correct this was, and when I came to some of the stations, you can't find everything in books, so it's like you're giving your heart on the cross and learning to pray from the heart. I came to the seventh station, and I couldn't find very much, so Jesus said, just open your heart and let me put you the paste that I put on Veronica's veil.
Right.
So
Well,
this has been a tremendous experience, and it's very healing. But when I came to the cross on where he was raised up, he says, I will raise you up.
well, let me explain that for a station as we did just a minute ago. The worst pain is when you see someone you love suffer intensely, and there's nothing you can do about it. The worst thing about that was the humiliation of Jesus seeing his mother see him in that condition. See, we don't get into anything. We don't get into the pain of Jesus. I think that was one of the worst pains Jesus and Mary had. When Simeon said to Mary, when she brought Jesus at the temple at the presentation, he said, this child is destined for the rise and fall of many in Israel, and a sword shall pierce your heart. I think there were 7 swords that pierced Mary's heart. I think that when she glanced at Jesus, and Jesus glanced at her, either one able to help, there was no way he could comfort her and no way she could comfort him except through her love and his love for her. I think that's when a sword pierced her heart. You can't look at someone you love and know that they're suffering intensely and you can do nothing about it and not have your heart break. You can't. It's impossible. If you haven't gotten that far, you're bad off. You can't look at these babies in Africa that are starving and then just turn a page. I mean, there has to be, when we've lost that. When you lose God and when we lose compassion for Jesus, you lose compassion for each other. Everything is just a news item. Nobody cries anymore over the right thing. We don't want to get involved, you see. Well, I hate to say it, we only got 2 minutes left. And we've only done 7 stations. But I hope that you see yourself in that. Do you see yourself a little better in the stations than you would before? Huh? Can you relate the stations to yourself now? Can you see yourself condemned sometimes? And then look at Jesus and say, how did he heal in total silence? And take upon yourself a cross that you feel is too heavy for you right now. You just don't have the strength for it. And then fall beneath it. Have you never looked at someone you loved and just felt so frustrated because there was nothing you could do? Have you ever suddenly had someone out of nowhere come and help you when you thought everything was lost? Huh? Did you ever have someone have the courage to stand by you as Veronica did in a terrible situation when everybody's against you? Everybody. When there's no one you can point to that said, here is a friend. Did you ever have that experience? Huh? Then have somebody come out of nowhere and say, I am your friend. Yes, he had his stations, and so do you. I would encourage you to go to your local church and make the stations. If you don't, go to your bookstore and get a book on them by now. I love you.